The ringing of the old rotary phone cut through the silence like a knife. I froze, dish towel in hand, as Eleanor's shrill voice carried from the next room. "That stubborn fool is still hanging on," she spat. "If he doesn't kick the bucket soon, I'll be stuck with that useless daughter-in-law forever." My heart pounded as I listened, rooted to the spot. Eleanor's words stung, but it was the hushed tone, laced with malice, that truly unsettled me. "Well, of course, I've kept that locked up tight all these years," she continued. "Can't have the old man's brats getting their grubby paws on what's rightfully mine." A chill ran down my spine. What deep, dark secret was my mother-in-law hiding? Before I could make sense of it, her voice dropped to a whisper, and the conversation ended abruptly. As the kitchen door swung open, Eleanor jumped, her eyes narrowing at the sight of me. "Were you eavesdropping again?" she sneered. "Honestly, Vivian, don't you have better things to do than lurk around like a common thief?" I opened my mouth to protest, but the words caught in my throat. Eleanor had a way of rendering me mute, her venom seeping into my very core. "Leave the poor girl be, Mother," a gentle voice called out. Warren, my father-in-law, shuffled into the room, his frail frame leaning heavily on his cane. "She's been run off her feet taking care of us." Eleanor scowled but said nothing, brushing past me with a huff. As her footsteps faded down the hall, Warren's kind eyes found mine. "Don't mind her, dear," he said, patting my arm. "You know how she gets." I managed a weak smile, my mind still reeling from the overheard conversation. What could Eleanor possibly be hiding, and why did it fill me with such dread? The rest of the day passed in a blur, my usual routine of cleaning, cooking, and tending to Warren's needs, feeling more like a prison sentence than ever before. Clark, my husband, was away on another business trip, leaving me to fend off his mother's barbs alone. As evening fell, I found myself in the old study, mindlessly straightening the shelves, while Warren dozed in his recliner. My gaze fell upon a tarnished silver frame, a faded photo of a much younger Eleanor staring back at me. In that moment, a fleeting thought crossed my mind. What if this secret, whatever it was, held the key to finally breaking free from her toxic grip? A glimmer of hope flickered within me, igniting a spark of determination I hadn't felt in years. I knew then that I couldn't let this go. For too long, I had endured Eleanor's cruelty in silence, sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of keeping the peace. But now, with Warren's health failing, I owed it to him, and to myself, to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As I looked at the frail man sleeping before me, a wave of resolve washed over me. This was about more than just me. It was about protecting the dignity of the one person in this family who had shown me kindness and respect. With a deep breath, I vowed to myself that I would get to the bottom of Eleanor's secret, no matter what it took. It was time to break the silence that had shackled me for far too long. That night, I tossed and turned, haunted by Eleanor's words and the implications of her secret. What could she possibly be hiding, and why did it fill me with such a sense of dread? As the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, my mind drifted back to those early days of my marriage to Clark. I had been so naive then, blinded by the rose-tinted glasses of young love. Eleanor had wasted no time in making her disdain for me clear. "A part-time cashier?" she had sneered during our first family dinner. "Is that really the best you could do, dear?" Clark had shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. It was a pattern that would repeat itself countless times over the years. Eleanor's barbs met with my husband's deafening silence. Even at community events, where Eleanor would plaster on her saccharine smile for the neighbors, her true colors would eventually show. "Vivian, darling, would you be a dear and fetch me another glass of wine?" she'd coo, her words dripping with condescension. The only respite I found was in Warren's kind eyes and gentle demeanor. He had a way of making me feel seen, valued, the complete opposite of his wife's demeaning behavior. As the years wore on, and Clark's job kept him away more and more, the emotional toll of Eleanor's constant belittling grew heavier. Dottie, my lifelong friend, became my rock, offering a sympathetic ear and sage advice. "You can't let that old bat get to you, Viv," she'd say, her no-nonsense tone a balm to my battered spirit. "She's just a bitter, miserable woman who gets her kicks from tearing others down." Dottie's words rang true, but they did little to ease the sting of Eleanor's cruelty. Still, I persevered, clinging to the hope that one day things would change. Little did I know that the catalyst for that change would come in the form of a tattered photograph and a faded letter, tucked away in the back of an old desk drawer. It was a few days after overhearing Eleanor's cryptic phone call that I stumbled upon them, my curiosity piqued by the sight of a younger, happier version of my mother-in-law. As I gingerly unfolded the letter, a name leapt off the page, one I didn't recognize. "Dearest Eleanor," it began, "I know you've always resented me for the life I've been able to provide for our family, but I promise you, every penny was earned through hard work and sacrifice." My heart raced as I read on, the words painting a picture of a man who had built a small fortune through sheer determination. A fortune that, according to the letter, was meant to be passed down to his children and grandchildren. A hidden inheritance? The pieces began to fall into place, and a sickening realization dawned on me. Eleanor's secret wasn't just about money, it was about greed, deceit, and a blatant disregard for her own family's well-being. As I clutched the letter, my hands trembling, I knew that I couldn't let this go. For too long I had been the victim of Eleanor's emotional abuse, but now the tables were turning. I would uncover the truth, no matter what it took, and ensure that Warren's legacy and his true wishes were honored. With a newfound sense of determination, I tucked the letter away, resolving to share my discovery with Dottie at our next meeting. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. Eleanor's reign of terror was about to come to an end. The days that followed were some of the most trying of my life. Warren's health took a sharp decline, leaving him bedridden and in need of constant care. As if that weren't enough, Eleanor's behavior grew increasingly erratic and venomous. "You'd better not let him die on your watch," she hissed one morning as I tended to Warren's needs. "I won't have you squandering what little he has left." Her words cut deep, but I refused to show weakness. I had a newfound sense of purpose, fueled by the knowledge of her deceit. Still, it was a constant battle to maintain my composure in the face of her cruelty. Dottie became my lifeline during those dark days. We'd meet for coffee whenever I could steal a few moments away, and I'd pour out my heart, sharing every sordid detail of Eleanor's latest tirade. "That woman is certifiable," Dottie would say, shaking her head in disbelief. "But you can't let her get to you, Viv. She's just lashing out because she knows her time is running out." Dottie's unwavering support was a balm to my frayed nerves, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. With her encouragement, I began secretly recording Eleanor's outbursts, capturing her true colors for all to hear. The tension in the house was palpable, like a tightly coiled spring ready to snap at any moment. Eleanor seemed to sense that the walls were closing in, and her desperation grew more apparent with each passing day. "I'll be handling all of Warren's affairs from now on," she announced one evening over dinner, her tone brooking no argument. "It's what he would have wanted." I nearly choked on my food, my blood boiling at her audacity. Before I could respond, however, Clark spoke up. "Mother, I think we should discuss this as a family," he said, his voice wavering slightly. "Vivian has been taking excellent care of Dad. She deserves a say." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might lash out at her own son. But then, as quickly as the storm had brewed, it passed, and she simply nodded curtly before excusing herself from the table. In the days that followed, Eleanor's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would disappear for hours at a time, only to return with a manic gleam in her eye, muttering about taking care of things. I knew she was up to something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. It was during one of these absences that Warren beckoned me to his bedside, his frail hand grasping mine with surprising strength. "Vivian, my dear," he rasped, his eyes filled with a sadness I'd never seen before. "I fear my time is growing short." My heart clenched at his words, but I forced a brave smile. "Don't talk like that, Warren. You're going to be just fine." He shook his head, a wistful smile playing on his lips. "You've always been a terrible liar, my dear, but that's one of the things I love about you." Tears pricked my eyes as he continued, his voice growing weaker with each word. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have taken care of long ago." He trailed off, his gaze growing distant. "In my study, behind the bookcase, there's a safe. Inside, you'll find my true last will and testament." My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of his words sank in. This was it, the key to unraveling Eleanor's web of lies, the proof I needed to ensure Warren's final wishes were honored. As Warren drifted off to sleep, I felt a new ounce of determination coursing through my veins. Eleanor's reign of terror was nearing its end, and I would be the one to bring her down, no matter the cost. With Dottie's support and the recordings as my ammunition, I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. And when it did, Eleanor would have no choice but to face the consequences of her actions, once and for all. The shrill ringing of the phone pierced the silence, jolting me awake in the early hours of the morning. My heart sank as I recognized the number on the caller ID. It was the hospital. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm afraid you need to come quickly." The nurse's voice was grave. "It's your father-in-law. His condition has taken a turn for the worse." Those words hung in the air like a leaden weight, stealing my breath away. Warren's health had been fragile, but some foolish part of me had clung to the hope that he still had time. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur, my mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts and emotions. What if I was too late? What if Eleanor had already swooped in and taken control, shutting me out completely? As I rushed through the sterile hallways, the harsh fluorescent lights seemed to mock my urgency. Finally, I reached Warren's room, the door slightly ajar. "Well, isn't this just perfect timing?" Eleanor's voice sliced through the air like a razor blade. "Now you can witness the final act of your little charade." I froze in the doorway, my eyes falling upon the frail figure in the hospital bed. Warren looked so small, so vulnerable, the machines around him beeping and whirring like some cruel metronome. Eleanor turned to face me, her expression a twisted mask of contempt. "You've had your fun, playing the doting daughter-in-law, but it's over now. This is a family matter, and you, my dear, are not family." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see my pain. Instead, I squared my shoulders and stepped into the room, my gaze locking with Warren's. "Don't listen to her, Warren," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm here for you, just like I've always been." A flicker of recognition passed over his face, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes. Eleanor scoffed, her perfectly coiffed hair bobbing with the force of her disdain. "Really, Vivian, must you make a scene? This is hardly the time or place." "You're right, Mother," a voice called out from behind me. Clark stepped into the room, his brow furrowed with concern. "This is a time for family to come together, not tear each other apart." Eleanor opened her mouth to protest, but Clark held up a hand, silencing her. "Vivian has been Dad's rock through all of this. She deserves to be here, just as much as we do." For a moment, I thought Eleanor might explode, her face turning an alarming shade of crimson. But then, as quickly as the storm had brewed, it passed, and she simply turned away with a huff. Seizing the opportunity, I moved closer to Warren's bedside, taking his hand in mine. His skin was cool to the touch, but his grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you for being here, my dear," he rasped, his voice little more than a whisper. "You've been a true blessing in my life, and for that I am eternally grateful." Tears pricked my eyes as I squeezed his hand, willing him to hold on just a little longer. In that moment, it didn't matter what Eleanor said or did. All that mattered was showing Warren the love and appreciation he deserved. As the hours ticked by, Clark and I took turns sitting vigil by Warren's side, sharing stories and cherished memories. Eleanor, true to form, remained aloof and distant, her mind no doubt already turning to the matter of his estate. But I refused to let her poisonous presence taint these final moments. This was about honoring the man who had shown me more kindness and respect than his own wife ever had. And as the sun began to rise on a new day, bathing the room in a warm, golden glow, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, for Warren and for the truth that had been hidden for far too long. The days following Warren's hospitalization were a blur of anxiety and determination. I found myself constantly torn between the desire to remain by his bedside and the need to strategize my next steps in uncovering Eleanor's deception. Dottie, ever my rock, was a constant source of support. "You have to take care of yourself, Viv," she would remind me during our hushed conversations in the hospital cafeteria. "Warren would want you to stay strong." Her words rang true, and I knew I had to gather my resolve if I was going to expose Eleanor's manipulative ways once and for all. So I turned to the one person I knew I could trust, Rhonda. Rhonda had been my confidant throughout this ordeal, her sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude a welcome counterbalance to Eleanor's theatrics. When I shared Warren's revelation about the hidden will, she didn't miss a beat. "You know what this means, don't you?" she said, leaning in conspiratorially. We need to find that will, no matter what it takes." Her words echoed my own thoughts, and I knew in that moment that I had found a powerful ally in my quest for the truth. Together, we hatched a plan, While I remained at Warren's side, keeping a watchful eye on Eleanor, Rhonda would scour the house, leaving no stone unturned in her search for the elusive document. The first few days yielded nothing, but Rhonda was relentless. "That old bat can't hide forever," she'd mutter under her breath, her determination unwavering. It was on the fourth day that her perseverance paid off. As I sat in the hospital waiting room, Dottie by my side, Rhonda burst through the doors, a triumphant gleam in her eye. "I found it," she whispered, pressing a folded piece of paper into my hand. It was tucked away in Warren's study behind one of the bookshelves. My heart raced as I unfolded the document, my eyes scanning the words that would prove to be the key to unraveling Eleanor's web of lies. Sure enough, there it was, a detailed account of Warren's wishes, explicitly stating that Eleanor was to have no control over his affairs or assets. The will named me, Rhonda and Dottie, as the executors, tasked with ensuring his true desires were carried out. I felt a surge of vindication, a renewed sense of purpose. This was the ammunition I needed to finally expose Eleanor's deceit and put a stop to her manipulation once and for all. But as I looked up, I was met with Dottie's grave expression. "Vivian, there's something else you need to know," she said, her voice heavy with concern. Eleanor's behavior had taken a disturbing turn in my absence. Emboldened by her belief that she was in control, she had become increasingly aggressive, lashing out at the staff and even attempting to bar me from seeing Warren. "She's unhinged, Viv," Dottie warned. "You need to be careful." I nodded, steeling my resolve. Eleanor's reign of terror was nearing its end, but I knew the final confrontation would be explosive. Still, I was ready, armed with the truth and the support of those who truly mattered. As I made my way back to Warren's room, I could feel the tension in the air, thick and oppressive. Eleanor was pacing, her face contorted with rage, when I entered. "You've gone too far this time," she spat, her words laced with venom. "This little game of yours has to stop." I took a deep breath, clutching the will tightly in my hand. "The only game being played here is yours, Eleanor, and it's over." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might lunge at me, but then something shifted in her expression, a flicker of fear, a realization that her carefully constructed facade was crumbling. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice wavering ever so slightly. I held up the will, letting the weight of its implications hang in the air between us. "It's time for you to face the truth, Eleanor. Warren's true wishes, his legacy, are right here, in black and white." The silence that followed was deafening, charged with a lifetime of resentment and deceit. But for the first time, I felt no fear, no hesitation. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the scales would finally tip in favor of justice and honor. And as I looked into Eleanor's eyes, I knew that this time there would be no escape, no more lies. This time, the truth would prevail. The weight of the document in my hands felt like an anchor, grounding me in a moment I had both dreaded and longed for. Eleanor's face contorted into a mask of rage and disbelief as the realization of her exposed deceit sank in. "You think this changes anything?" she spat, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. That pathetic old man was senile, his mind addled by disease and medication. I steeled myself, refusing to be cowed by her vitriol. "We both know that's not true, Eleanor. Warren was of sound mind when he made these wishes known to me." Her eyes narrowed to slits, and for a moment I thought she might lunge at me. But then, a movement in the doorway caught my attention. Clark had arrived, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, his gaze darting between us. Before I could respond, Eleanor pounced, her words laced with venom. "Your wife has finally shown her true colors, Clark. She's been plotting behind our backs, trying to turn you against your own family." I opened my mouth to protest, but Clark held up a hand, silencing us both. "Enough," he said, his voice firm. "Vivian, what is she talking about?" Taking a deep breath, I handed him the will, watching as his eyes scanned the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each passing moment. "Dad wanted you to have control over his affairs?" he murmured, his gaze lifting to meet mine. "And he specifically excluded Mother?" Eleanor scoffed, but I could see the fear flickering in her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous, Clark. That document is a forgery, plain and simple." But Clark wasn't listening. Instead, he turned to me, his expression a mixture of bewilderment and dawning realization. "Vivian, is this true? Has my mother been lying to us all this time?" I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. This was the moment I had been dreading, the moment when I would have to lay bare the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "It's all true, Clark. I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within me. Your mother has been keeping secrets, hiding the truth about your father's wishes for years. Eleanor's face turned a mottled shade of purple, and for a moment I thought she might faint. But then she rallied, her anger boiling over like a volcano. How dare you, she seethed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the palms of her hands. After everything I've done for this family, this is how you repay me. Clark's expression hardened, and I could see the years of blind loyalty to his mother beginning to crack. Mother, if what Vivian is saying is true, then you've been lying to us all along. Of course it's not true, Eleanor cried, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. She's just a jealous, conniving little worm who's been trying to turn you against me from the start. But her words rang hollow, and I could see the doubt creeping into Clark's eyes. Seizing the opportunity, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the recordings, the damning evidence of Eleanor's true nature captured in her own words. Don't believe me? I said, pressing play. Then listen to this. The sound of Eleanor's voice filled the room, her harsh, cutting tones echoing off the sterile walls. That useless daughter-in-law better not let him die on her watch. I won't have her squandering what's rightfully mine. Clark's face drained of color as the recordings played on, each word a damning indictment of his mother's selfishness and greed. By the time the final clip had ended, the room was deathly silent, save for the sound of Eleanor's ragged breathing. Mother? Clark's voice was barely above a whisper, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Is this how you really feel? For a moment, Eleanor seemed to waver, her mask of confidence slipping. But then, just as quickly, she rallied, her chin jutting out in defiance. Of course not, Mother, she snapped. That little wretch has been twisting my words from the start. Can't you see she's trying to turn us against each other? But the damage was done. Clark's gaze met mine, and in that moment, I saw a lifetime of blind loyalty and denial crumbling before my eyes. I think I've heard enough, he said, his voice heavy with resignation. Mother, I don't know what to say. Eleanor's face contorted into a snarl, and for a fleeting moment I feared for our safety. But then, just as quickly as the storm had brewed, it passed, and she simply turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, her heels clicking angrily against the tile. In the silence that followed, Clark and I stood frozen, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. But as my gaze fell upon Warren's frail form, still and peaceful in the hospital bed, I knew that we had done the right thing. The truth, no matter how painful, had finally been laid bare. And while the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, I knew that we would face them together, united in our commitment to honoring Warren's legacy and breaking free from Eleanor's toxic grip once and for all. The silence that followed Eleanor's abrupt exit was deafening, charged with a lifetime of unspoken truths and buried resentments. Clark and I stood frozen, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. It was Warren who broke the spell, his frail voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Vivian, my dear, come here. I moved to his bedside, my heart pounding in my chest. His eyes, once so vibrant and full of life, now held a weary resignation. A silent acceptance of the inevitable. You did the right thing, he rasped, his hand finding mine and giving it a gentle squeeze. For too long, I've allowed Eleanor's manipulations to go unchecked, too afraid of the consequences to stand up to her. Tears pricked my eyes as I returned his grasp, marveling at the strength he still possessed, even in his weakened state. But you, he continued, his gaze shifting to Clark, who had moved to stand beside me. You have shown a courage that I could only dream of. Clark swallowed hard, his jaw clenched as he fought to maintain his composure. Dad, I don't know what to say. All these years, and I had no idea. Warren's lips curved into a sad smile. Your mother has always been a force to be reckoned with. She has a way of bending the truth to suit her needs, of making even the most outrageous lies seem plausible. His words rang true, and I felt a pang of guilt for having been so blind to Eleanor's machinations for so long. But Warren's gentle squeeze pulled me back to the present, his eyes imploring me to listen. Vivian, you have been the light in this family's darkness, he said, his voice growing fainter with each passing moment. Your unwavering kindness, your loyalty, these are the qualities that truly matter in this world. I nodded, blinking back tears as I clung to his words like a lifeline. Promise me, he whispered, his grip tightening ever so slightly. Promise me that you'll continue to be that beacon, no matter what lies ahead. I promise, I choked out, my heart swelling with a mix of sorrow and determination. Warren's gaze shifted to Clark once more, his expression one of paternal pride and love. "And you, my son, promise me that you'll stand by your wife, that you'll protect her and honor her as she has honored me." Clark's jaw worked silently for a moment, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. But then he squared his shoulders and met his father's gaze with a resolute nod. "I promise, Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise." A look of profound peace washed over Warren's features, and for a moment it was as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He gave our hands one final squeeze, his lips curving into a contented smile. "Thank you," he breathed, his eyes fluttering closed. "Thank you both." In the hours that followed, we kept a silent vigil by Warren's bedside, our hands intertwined in a show of unity and strength. Eleanor's absence was a palpable presence, a constant reminder of the battle that still lay ahead. But as the night wore on, and the first rays of dawn began to filter through the hospital windows, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I was no longer alone. I had Clark by my side, his unwavering support a bulwark against the storms to come. And as I looked upon Warren's peaceful face, I knew that we had honored his final wishes in the most profound way possible, by standing together, united in our pursuit of truth and justice, no matter the cost. Eleanor's reign of terror was nearing its end, and while the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, I knew that we would face them head-on, armed with the knowledge that we were fighting for something greater than ourselves. This was about more than just exposing one woman's lies. It was about reclaiming our family's honor, about ensuring that Warren's legacy would live on, untainted by greed and manipulation. And as the first rays of the new day bathed the room in a warm, golden glow, I felt a sense of resolve settle deep within me. Eleanor's time was up, the truth had been set free, and there was no turning back. The days following Warren's passing were a blur of grief and resolution. As we laid him to rest, surrounded by those who had truly loved and respected him, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace amidst the sorrow. Eleanor, predictably, was nowhere to be seen. In the aftermath of our explosive confrontation, she had retreated into her self-imposed exile, her once formidable presence reduced to little more than a whispered rumor. "Good riddance," Rhonda muttered as we gathered for the wake, her eyes scanning the crowd as if daring Eleanor to show her face. "That woman has caused enough pain in this family." Dottie nodded in solemn agreement, her hand finding mine and giving it a gentle squeeze. "You did the right thing, Viv. Warren would be proud." Her words were a balm to my aching heart, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, the bonds of true friendship can provide solace and strength. As the days turned to weeks, it became increasingly clear that Eleanor's reign of terror had finally come to an end. The community that had once fawned over her now regarded her with a mixture of pity and disdain, her carefully cultivated facade of respectability shattered beyond repair. "Did you hear?" Rhonda would whisper conspiratorially as we shared coffee on her porch. "The Hendersons have cut ties with her completely. Apparently she tried to strong-arm them into supporting her version of events." I would shake my head in disbelief, marveling at the depths to which Eleanor had sunk in her desperation to cling to her crumbling empire. But even as the whispers and rumors swirled around us, Clark and I remained steadfast, our focus firmly fixed on the future. A future that would honor Warren's legacy and the values he had held so dear. "We'll build a new home," Clark declared one evening as we pored over the details of Warren's will. "A fresh start, free from the shadows of the past." His words resonated deeply within me, and I felt a surge of hope and determination that I hadn't experienced in years. With the support of our friends and the guidance of Warren's meticulously documented wishes, we set about making plans. Plans that would not only secure our own future, but also ensure that Warren's hard-earned legacy would be preserved for generations to come. As the months passed, the construction of our new home became a symbol of our resilience, a tangible representation of the strength we had found in each other and in the pursuit of truth and justice. And as the final touches were put in place, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us to this point. A journey that had tested me in ways I could never have imagined, but one that had ultimately revealed the depths of my own courage and resolve. "Look at us," Dottie marveled as we stood on the front porch surveying the fruits of our labor. "Who would have thought that little cashier girl from all those years ago would end up here?" I smiled, my gaze drifting over the warm, inviting lines of our new home, a home built on a foundation of love, loyalty, and hard-won triumph. "You know," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, "I wouldn't have it any other way." In that moment, I knew that I had finally broken free from the shackles of Eleanor's toxic influence. Her manipulations and lies had been laid bare, her carefully constructed facade of control reduced to rubble. But more than that, I had emerged from the ashes of her deceit stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever before. I had faced my demons head-on and emerged victorious, armed with the knowledge that true strength comes not from power or privilege, but from the unwavering bonds of love, loyalty, and the pursuit of justice. As I stepped across the threshold of our new home, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. A peace born of the knowledge that I had honored Warren's legacy and protected the values he had held so dear. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with my head held high, secure in the knowledge that I had finally broken the silence that had shackled me for far too long.